Not one, not two, but three coaching changes. What is going on?
Hey,
You are Locked On Golden
no matter what
Gophers,
we're going to do here, we're just going to keep rowing.
your daily podcast on the Minnesota
Whatever
Golden
turns out, however it
Gophers.
turns out, we're just going to keep rowing.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We're just going to keep rowing, and keep rowing.
You're listening to Locked On Golden Gophers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name's Kane Robb, host of the podcast, former collegiate football video coordinator and recruiting assistant, here to talk Golden Gophers with you each and every day of the week. And we have all sorts of coaching changes going on with the Gophers right now. What is happening? What is making this happen? Three coaches in the last 48 hours are rumored to be going to other schools, and not only other schools, but schools in the Big Ten Conference. So who is the coaches? If you haven't heard by now, we're looking at the defensive backs coach. Coach Haynes is headed to Wisconsin. The defensive line coach is headed to Purdue, Coach Brick Haley. And now Coach Shiraka, the offensive coordinator, looks like he may be heading to Rutgers. All in the conference, all leaving the Gophers. Why is that happening? Well, the first thing you can look at is some of their contracts might be being up. Now, two for sure were up at the end of January. That's Coach Haynes and Coach Brick. Both of them had their contracts running out at the end of this January month on January 31st. So maybe they got the news that they weren't going to be brought back. Maybe not. We don't know 100% on that information, but that does happen in these coaching periods and in these coaching swings as you either get extended or you start looking for the next job. Now, Coach Shiraka was a little bit more curious for me, and we'll talk about that in a second. But when it comes to Coach Haynes, I looked into it a little bit more, and Coach Haynes coached with Coach Fickell, who is now the head coach at Wisconsin, for 6 seasons at Ohio State. And actually, Coach Haynes was tapped as the co-defensive coordinator under Coach Fickell when he was the interim head coach for that one season in 2011 with the Ohio State Buckeyes. So they have a connection. They have a history together. This isn't the first time. So it makes more sense if Coach Haynes wasn't getting extended or he just saw an opportunity to go on with someone he's already worked 6 years with. So they have the history, they have that idea. And then on top of it, Coach Rossi is locked in as the defensive coordinator here for as long as we can keep him. So that opportunity wasn't necessarily there for Coach Haynes in the immediate future. Whereas Coach Jim Leonhard just left the Badgers as the defensive coordinator. So who knows if that's an opportunity Coach Haynes could step into in the future. It's definitely a possibility, but that connection between him and Coach Fickell makes a little bit more sense once you know the history between those two. Now, when it comes to Coach Brick Haley, respect to him, but the defensive line probably has been the room that needs the most improvement on this defense, especially when you look at the 2022 season. The Gophers just could not generate pressure, and it was a big issue. So adding new energy to that room, a new voice, a new maybe style or approach on the defensive line could change things up for the better in the defensive line room. So I'm not too panicked on that one, but it is curious that all these guys are choosing to go in conference. Maybe they weren't getting extended and they wanted to be able to have the opportunity to try to get back at the Gophers. Who knows? But like I said, in that defensive line room, new energy is exactly what this team needs. And Coach Winston De La Tibidere, I cannot say his last name. I couldn't say his last name when he was a player, and I'll work on it, but bear with me. We're going to call him Coach Winston right now. Coach Winston is a former Gopher, and he's set to be the new defensive line coach. We've heard it that it's almost near a done deal with some reporters out there. I've heard some players have even been told that he is the guy being tapped. So I'm almost ready to lock that one in, and I'm excited for it. And not only am I excited, I tapped my guy, Daniel House, over at Gophers Guru. If you haven't looked up Gophers Guru, followed, subscribed, and all of that, Daniel House is one of the smartest Gophers analytics folks out there. He breaks down the film. He knows football like the back of his hand. So I tapped him and I was like, Daniel, House, tell me something about Coach Winston that you like about it so far. And he said he is an extremely high energy guy, spent a lot of time around Mario Cristobal, former Oregon coach. And his big mentor is Marcus West, who maybe a lot of people don't know. Well, Marcus West is the former Gophers defensive line coach and the current Buffalo Bills defensive line coach. So that is Coach Winston's mentor, and you could probably see in him picking the brain of Coach West and really incorporating different ideas from that similarity. Now, if you think about the Buffalo Bills, you'd know the Buffalo Bills defense is nasty. The D-line is nasty. They're great in the run game. The D-backs are nasty, but we're talking about D-line right now. So having that type of figure in the room could be really big for this Gophers defensive line, especially on the interior and the edge. Both needed to create more pressure this season. That's a fact. Like, you know it, I know it, the coaches knew it, the media and analysts knew it. So the fact that Coach Winston's bringing that new energy, I think it'll be really big time. Now, this isn't the only time we're going to talk about him. We're going to talk about him again tomorrow. I have former Gopher Galen Elmore coming on the show, and he is going to spit straight facts about the new defensive line coach coming in. So you're definitely going to want to stay tuned for that one. Be sure to hit subscribe if you're watching over on YouTube. Now, what I want to talk about coming up next is more about Coach Shiraka. That's the one that threw us off. That's the latest one that broke. And it's probably the most unexpected one. That's what I want to talk about coming up next. But first, we got to give a shout to our friends over at BetOnline. BetOnline is where you can find the latest sports betting information, news, analysis. They've got podcasts and more over there. If you're ever looking for betting lines, check it out over at BetOnline, where the game starts. Now, like I said, we're talking about Coach Shiraka next because this is the one that really threw me off, did not see it coming, and I have no idea where it's coming from, to be honest, because he's on record as being really excited to work with quarterback Ethan Kaliakmanis. He was here and recruited Ethan Kaliakmanis before he went to Penn State and Western Virginia. And then he comes back and is working with Ethan Kaliakmanis again, said to the media, I was in those pressers where he is excited for the future. He can be that guy for the Gophers in the future, special arm talent, special capabilities. And now you're going to leave to go to Rutgers? Like, it just doesn't add up for me. On top of that, you've got the fact that he just got a pay bump. When Coach Fleck got his extension, it also raised up his assistants and coordinators' salaries as well. So Coach Shiraka just got a pay bump, said he wanted to work with Ethan Kaliakmanis. So why leave? And on top of that, leave to an intra-conference opponent that is a lower standard, if we're just being honest. I mean, Rutgers hasn't been winning games. They haven't been doing the thing out there. The Gophers have been trending up. Yes, there's some disappointment. Yes, we should have won the West by now. I know, we can move past it until we get to next year. But what I'm saying is Rutgers is not the same caliber as the Gophers right now. So why on earth would Coach Shiraka be leaving? I'm still not fully sure on that. And as I dig deeper, as I reach out to more contacts, I'll try to bring you the latest and greatest information on that. But with Coach Shiraka leaving, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Now, you might be like, why? Why is that not a bad thing? Well, there is the negative of Ethan Kaliakmanis will be going into his third offensive system already. He worked under Coach Sanford. He worked under Coach Shiraka, and now he might have a new offensive coordinator. That's a lot for a young quarterback, but this is his first season with a fully off season of him as the guy. So whoever they bring in here, you have to know that that person is going to be tapped, knowing that Ethan is the future and making it easy to build that system directly around his success. So that is a positive. On top of that, the Gophers offense has been lackluster in the passing game. That's just the nice way of putting it. In the passing game, we've talked about this in the past, in the episode last week. The Gophers have not cracked the top 100 teams in the FBS since Coach Fleck has been here when it comes to pass attempts. They haven't been in the top 100 schools. And just to let you know, if you don't know, there's 131 teams in the FBS. So we haven't cracked the top 100 in that. A new coach, a new voice, hopefully maybe a more modern approach to the offense can maybe get us over that hump, get us exploiting defenses in a new manner that we have the talent to do that now. We have the quarterback who can scramble, who can throw it off platform, who can throw at multiple arm angles, who can move out of the pocket, who can do it all. Now, yes, he's young. Yes, he's still making connections, but the talent is all there. So you pair that with a more modern offensive mind, and you have a deeper wide receiver room with 12 guys on scholarship right now. We'll see how many of those stay after the spring season, but you're talking about a deep wide receiver room, a highly talented quarterback, and then 3 running backs that all have proven they can catch it out of the backfield at the high school and now heading into the collegiate level. There's a lot of talent in there on top of having offensive line depth galore. So having a new offensive coordinator that can bring a new approach could be a positive. It could be a bonus. And yes, it stinks that the Gophers have 3 different coaches leaving right now, but it could be for the better. The Gophers, overall, we'll talk about it. Who could be the right candidates at this offensive coordinator position? I'm going to bring Daniel House on very soon in the near future. I know he'll have a couple of ideas of who could really spice this thing up. And that's what we're going to talk about coming up next week. Now, again, like I said, tomorrow, we're going to talk to Galen Elmore and learn more about the new defensive line coach as well. Now, finally, I have some final thoughts on this whole coaching thing, and then I want to look at the comments, get some of your questions, get some of your thoughts going. So if you have questions or thoughts, drop them in the comments. I'll be seeing them there in just a moment. But first, let's talk about our friends over at Built Bar. If you work out, if you need energy, if you need protein, definitely check Built Bar out. And you don't even have to do it online anymore. You can go to Walmart and they are selling it there as well. So check out Built Bar. They have delicious flavors, 17 grams of protein, and low calories. Now let's wrap this thing off. The final things I want to say before we dive into the comments is don't panic. Don't panic. Keep rowing. Like, I know that I've talked about the positives with Coach Fleck, but I've also been critical on some things that need to continue to progress. And I'm telling you, don't panic, because Coach Fleck has continuously got and brought in high-level assistant coaches. So it's not all crazy. It's not all, oh gosh, we're going to be bad because we lost 3 coaches. No, Coach Rossi is still here, and that is huge. That is major. This defense has been the core over these last 2 years, and Coach Rossi is a huge fundamental piece of that. So he's still here. Coach Fleck is still here. Coach Collins, who is just listed as one of the up-and-coming coaches on a coaching poll recently in this season, is still here, the safeties coach. And then Coach Callie of the offensive line. So we still have some major, highly talented, high-level coaches, and they're going to bring in more. And Coach Winston looks to be ready to take that mantle, take that torch, and be just as good as well. So the foundation is still in place, and the excitement still should be there, even though there's change, even though there's unexpectedness when it comes to these coaching changes. Now, let's look at the comments overall. Another coaching setback. I just said it possibly could be a setback because you're changing constantly with your quarterback and the systems they're working in. But like I said, it could be seen as a positive as well, because if we can bring in maybe more modern concepts, more of a heavy passing attack. And I'm not saying go balls to the wall. I'm not saying be a top 10 passing team. That's not what the Gophers are going to do. They're still going to ground and pound, especially with the line depth and the RB talent that are coming in. But to be able to pass the ball more efficiently, more creatively, and be able to attack defenses in new ways, that's something the Gophers haven't been doing. They didn't do it with Sanford. They didn't do it with Coach Shiraka unless they had that 1 year with Bateman and Johnson. So maybe, just maybe, if we can tap a more modern approach, up-and-coming guy for this offensive coordinator position, that could be the answer. It could be something good for the Gophers. Now, if Kirk leaves again, I don't want him back. I don't disagree. If you're going to leave, come back, and then leave again, I'm not going to, 3 strikes, you're out, right? You can't come back and try to, if you don't hit it, if you don't make it at your next job, you can't just look at this like Josh McDaniels on the Patriots. If I fail out, I can come right back. We're not like that. So I definitely feel you on that one. But overall, I don't think it's time to panic. There are a lot of coaching changes, but the coaching talent has been very consistent for the assistant pools here. We've had multiple coaches tapped for head coaching positions now. We just saw the latest with Coach Burns heading to Kent State. So I think overall the Gophers will get this covered. It'll be handled, and it's nothing to worry about. It's sad, bid them adieu, good luck, not great luck because you're heading to conference opponents and that's just wild, but the Gophers will be okay. This is the show where we always continue to row, and we're going to keep rowing with this one. I think we're going to keep a heavy look on who the Gophers tap in these positions moving forward. Now, like I said, Coach Winston is going to be the defensive line coach, most likely. We're going to talk about him in depth with a former player tomorrow. So be sure to hit subscribe if you're on YouTube so you don't miss out on that episode. And then as we find out more about the defensive backs coach that comes in and the new offensive coordinator, whether that's internally or if it's tapped outside, we'll keep you posted on those. We'll give you thoughts on options. Again, I'm going to bring on Daniel House, friend of the show, to talk about some options that would really pique his interest. And there's a lot of folks that are maybe a little nervous with these coaching changes that the recruits would leave, that the prospects, the commits that have made the commitment to these coaches and the relationships they've built, maybe they'd leave because that coach isn't here anymore. That it could be a concern. I have reached out to a few recruits. I've heard back from a few recruits. I've even heard back from a few current players, and they're excited by the new energy. They're excited by the program, and that's what they're here for, is the program. They built into the culture. They bought into what we're building and not just the coach. And I've spoken to multiple recruits now and a couple of players on the team. The energy is still up, and I think it should be up for you, the fans, as well. And if you have any other final thoughts, final questions, drop them in the comments. Otherwise, we're going to wrap this one up here. But overall, you got coach of the D-line, Brick Haley, moving on, Coach Haynes moving on of the D-backs, and Coach Shiraka all moving on. Just wild. Just wild. And the weirdest part is that they're all moving in conference. But we're going to be okay. We're going to be fine. A tough season coming up. But it's the best that it happened now, that it happened in early January, because you still have time. Not all of, especially the assistant coaches, haven't really been filled when it comes to the top candidates. First, you're always filling out the head coaching positions. We've kind of seen that dry up now. So if Coach Fleck were to walk away, that would be concerning, because what candidates do you have to look at? But the assistant positions are just now starting to fill. Like I said, the two of those contracts were coming up at the end of January anyway. So other schools around the nation also have their guys' contracts coming up. So now is the time where you do hire those new assistants. So now is the time to, if you need to make a change, be in that pool so you can go out there and try to get the top candidates before that pool dries up as well. That is going to do it for us today here at Locked On Golden Gophers. No panic. How many players? Last question. We got one popped up. How many players will transfer after all of this? Honestly, maybe you see one or two. I don't think it will, because I think that at the second the Coach Fleck and Coach Rossi knew these changes were coming, they reached out to every single one of these prospects and touch base with them, let them know ahead of time, pick their brains, let them know how important they're going to be for this program still. And even with the changes, even with a new assistant coach at their position, they have them in mind. And I can say for certain that that was a heavy stress. As soon as you know that one of these coaches is leaving, as soon as you know that there's a big change coming, that's priority number one, is going out and talking to the commits. So if you ever need information and if you ever need information on coaching changes, sometimes commits are the first people that can give you that information. But overall, I know the commits have been talked to. I know that they're feeling the love. They're feeling the positivity. I wouldn't expect too many transfers because Coach Fleck has a record of hiring quality assistants. We're already seeing the defensive line coach might be right in there in that quality level. So I wouldn't expect anything different from the D-backs or the offensive coordinator. And I definitely think that the Gophers coaching staff is on top of it and ahead of it, as opposed to falling behind and playing catch up. So I wouldn't worry too much about how many players would transfer. Maybe one, maybe two when it comes to commits, and players themselves. If they're ready to transfer, they were already thinking about it anyway. So I think the key guys are here, and they're here to stay, here to play, and here to grow into the 2023 season. All right, folks. Thank you for tapping in. This was an emergency podcast that we wanted to do about all these coaching changes. Be sure to hit subscribe on YouTube and leave a 5-star review wherever you get podcasts at Locked On Golden Gophers. That's going to do it for us. Thank you so much for making us your first listen when it comes to Gophers Daily Sports. Tomorrow, we are talking with Galen Elmore, former Gophers player who played with the new defensive line coach, Coach Winston, coming in. So we'll get his thoughts on what the Gophers are getting with that new hire. That's coming tomorrow. Be sure to tune in. This is Kane Robb signing off. Row the boat. Sky Ma. Go Gophers.